Tom, welcome back, dude.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, we were just doing the math. It's been a minute.
It's been a very long time. And you've been at this for 9 years.
Yeah.
You've been doing your show and
Believe
everything.
it or not.
What's new for you? What is happening?
Well, so I made it was a gradual pivot over time to talking more about finance, economics, politics, but it became a real abrupt shift recently with the launch of the Bilyeu show as a live streaming thing. So I now live stream about 9 hours a week, plus doing what we call the tight 60. So we'll film a 3-hour session live with the community, going back and forth on whatever's popping off in the world. And then we'll stop down and then I'll condense into like 60 minutes what's hot right now in this moment. And politics is weird, man. Some kind of way.
I felt like COVID kind of did that. I felt that's when I started to notice your content started to shift.
100%. But the journey there, I never thought I would end up in politics. And I still don't consider it like politics centric. There are important issues that people need to get good at thinking through because they actually matter. We can talk about why in this particular minute if you guys think it'll be advantageous. But in COVID, it was at Quest, I had 1,000 of my 3,000 employees grew up in the hood. And when COVID hit, I was like, they're all going to lose their jobs because all of them are working like manual labor, in person. None of them know how to manage money. And so this is just going to be devastating. So I thought, let me start doing financial content, literally just thinking about them and like, so I had an avatar in my mind. I'm going to do this financial content to help them weather the storm and hopefully get on the other side of it. But I realized I didn't understand investing money. So I was like, oh, let me get a couple steps ahead. I'll learn about this. I'll bring guests on. Same thing I did with gut health for my wife. And you suddenly start realizing, hold on a second, money doesn't work the way that I thought it did. And then I was like, whoa, this is like a scam is maybe the wrong word, but it's directionally correct. So I was like, whoa. And as you begin to unwind how money works, like why do the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, it leads you to money printing, inflation. And I just started getting really amped up about, okay, hold on a second. Like a lot of people are being ripped off and they're being ripped off because of a system. And then that just spun me out into doing deep dives on economics, Ray Dalio, and then that will get you pointed into US v China, which there's a saying called Thucydides Trap. So anyway, as I'm just trying to make content to help these people that I knew, loved, and cared about understand how to basically balance their budget, I end up realizing we're on a collision course with China and it just completely takes over my intellectual life. And I can't help myself but talk about the things that occupy my thoughts.
At what point in that did you read the Creature from Jekyll Island? Like at what point did you start learning about that?
You get to that pretty fast. So once you're like, okay, wait a second, what is money printing? Why are we doing it? Because that was the first domino to fall for me because I kept waiting for the bombshell to happen where everybody was going to lose their jobs and it didn't happen. And so I was like, what's going on? So then you get to money printing and then you're like, wait, hold on a second. There's government sanctioned counterfeiting? Like what's happening right now? And then at first you're like, oh, maybe this is awesome. And then you start going down the path of, oh, nope, actually this is exactly why somebody in my position is doing great. And then other people are getting hammered. And yeah, the understanding that we live in an economic system that was constructed was pretty eye-opening.
Explain that for the audience, because I do think that most people get trapped in that way of thinking, meaning, oh, this is good, that they're helping me out. Oh, and so explain why it's not good and why do people think it's such a good thing?
Okay, so the reason it seems like such a good thing is somebody's going to give you money for free. I mean, that really, even now, I'm like, that does sound pretty awesome. Like if I was going to campaign on something, I would love to campaign on, I'm going to give you free money. The catch becomes that all of the value of things and the money in your pocket, they're so intertwined in terms of a thing called purchasing power. And what people don't understand is that you do need to be able to create money out of thin air. Like that is a thing. Like you need that process for reasons that if you want to push on later, we can go deeper into it, but you need that process. But it needs to be tied to an increase in the amount of things that you can spend that money on. And if it is, then people don't notice that more money is coming into the system. But when it's literally just, oh, everybody is about to get obliterated by this thing called COVID, so we're going to have to print a ton of money so that we can keep companies from going under, that anybody that loses their job, we can give them money to stay afloat. When you do that, but you're not creating new goods, what ends up happening is, yes, you have more money in your pocket, but it buys less in almost the exact amount that you have money in your pocket. So there are studies on this that show the correlation between inflation, so prices across the board going up. It's very important to understand inflation is when prices across the board go up. Everything becomes more expensive. Okay, so inflation, the correlation between money printing and inflation is between 0.6 and 0.9. So even if you split the difference, these are basically the same phenomena. So when you print money, you cause things to become more expensive because you've counterfeited money. You've literally just made it up out of thin air. But where it gets scary is when you make that money up out of thin air, how do you get it into the system? And that's how the rich end up getting richer and the poor end up getting poor. It's one of the ways. So
yeah, when I first learned about this, if you look at the history of money, like why do we even have money? I mean, originally, if you go back far enough, the way people dealt with each other was they traded. So you have chickens and I have shovels, and I'll say, I'll give you one shovel for 4 of your chickens, and we make a deal. But what happens if you have chickens, I have shovels, and you don't want shovels? How do I deal with you? So they created money, and money represented, it represented things. It represented the ability to buy things with it. It represented goods, services, and efficiency, work. But if it doesn't line up perfectly, then things just get more expensive.
Yeah, and to really pin that down, if it doesn't line up perfectly with something somewhere in a bank, let's call it, then it's what they call fiat currency, which fiat means by decree. So this has value because I say so as the government. It is far less deranging when the money is tied one-to-one with, say, gold, right? And that's the one I think most people are familiar with is you have these dollars, but it's tied to real gold that's in a warehouse. And technically, like paper money started as the IOU to get your gold back. And so instead of going and getting the gold and bringing it to the you would just say, here's the IOU for however many pieces of gold that you have or however many ounces. And then we, obviously in the US, we break from the gold standard in 1971. And then it just became, we can print as much money as we want. We don't have to be tethered to anything.
We tried to tether it to oil is what we did.
Yeah, so we do a trade-off where it's like the petrodollar is the thing that allows us to still be the world's reserve currency because there's something anchored to it. So from a global economic standpoint, that was very helpful. Otherwise, everything just fluctuates all over the place, and it doesn't matter what you trade your currency in. And so the U.S. would have put themselves in a really bad position because when you're the world's reserve currency, you can export your inflation. So if everybody around the world holds your debt and you do inflation, inflation is theft. So you print money. When you print money, you're stealing buying power, but you're stealing it equally from everybody. Everybody that has dollars in this case, they're stolen from in the same amount. So the rich and the poor are stolen from equally. But because when the money gets put back in the system, it's going to be a double whammy for the wealthy. One, because the Fed will put it into circulation by buying traditionally government debt. But recently they've started buying corporate debt, which is far more insane. And I can't believe that people were just like, okay. I think it's largely because they don't understand that that is the Fed picking winners and losers, like literally deciding we're going to make sure this company survives and not that company. Is absolutely bananas. And then because of inflation, the cost of the assets go up. And so they're not going up because they're actually more valuable. They're going up because the value of the dollar is going down. It buys less. So if you want to buy my house, then I need the buying power equivalent in dollars. So it creates this optical illusion that my house is worth more money, when in reality it's not.
Yeah. Today's program giveaways maps split. If you want to win, leave a comment below this video. In the first 24 hours that we drop it, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. If you win, we'll let you know in the comments section. We also have a sale. Maps 15 Performance and the RGB bundle are half off. If you're interested, go to mapsfitnessproducts.com and then use the code MAY50 for the discount. Here comes the show.
That's also how the wealthy protect themselves in a situation like that, which is why the wealthy get wealthier and the middle class or poor really get hurt.
You have
by
weird,
100%.
distorted pressures, and that's why it's impossible to look at it without looking at politics. Because, for example, a majority of Americans, I'd love your opinion on this. A lot of Americans, majority of Americans have their wealth tied into their house.
Yep.
So if you're a politician and you look at this, and let's say you're an honest politician, which doesn't exist, but let's just say that does exist, and you look at it and you go, the cost of homes is massively inflated. It has massively inflated for all these different reasons. We need to make them more affordable. You have no political power because so many Americans own homes. There isn't a single person that's going to raise their hand and say, yeah, let's do these policies to lower the price of my home. So they're completely intertwined. It's almost like how do you fix it when you're not going to get any votes to fix it?
Yeah. Well, the good news is on a long enough timeline, they just behead the people that cock block them for real. And
I mean, that's the Ray Dalio story.
Yes,
there.
this is what people don't understand. And this is literally what we're living through now is you either get a civil war, a revolution, or Thucydides Trap where you collide with the rising superpower. So it's pretty rare that you get what Ray Dalio describes as the beautiful deleveraging, where you slowly back your way out of these insane debt policies and you get into fiscal responsibility. It's really pretty rare. It almost always, you get what's called a debt jubilee. It's such a nice way of saying a lot of people die. But that's what happens. And so the French Revolution was literally bring the wealthy, lop their heads off, and we're going to reboot government. World War II, when Britain was the world's reserve currency and the dominant economic superpower, they just got bled to death fighting that war, and they owed the U.S. so much money. And then the U.S. got the privilege through the Bretton Woods Agreement, what you were talking about earlier. And now we're finding that, we're in danger of losing it because every time somebody has that privilege, they print money.
Now, what's interesting about this is in some cases, because the dollar's lost something like 90-something% of its value, especially since we severed it from the gold standard. So now they can just print it. There's nothing they have to tie it to. But what's interesting is within that period of time, I think it was, you said 1971, was it?
That was the Nixon shock when he pulled us off the gold standard.
So 1971 till now, we also have this technological revolution that dramatically improves efficiency, at least for certain types of products.
Yep.
Okay. So the efficiency outpaced inflation in many ways. In other words, a flat screen TV, plasma 10 years ago is way more expensive than it is today, even though the dollar is far less valuable than it was when those plasma TVs came out, because tech has just the explosion of efficiency with tech has outpaced inflation. Do you foresee that potential with like AI and with tech maybe solving this? Because sure, things are inflated, money's worth nothing, but tech is going to advance so quickly. AI is going to do things for us that normally would require so much labor, so much work, that it will outpace this and maybe solve this problem, or at least.
As soon as you're talking about AI, you have to give me a timeline on which you want me to answer it.
Okay.
For real.
Okay, so explain. What do you mean by that?
If you said, what's AI going to do in the next 10 years? I'm going to give you an answer where I have grounding to speak about it. I don't have to give you an act of faith. I can say, given the things that we know about energy usage, things like that, will probably be roughly, in this ballpark. But if you're saying extrapolate out 30 years, all of a sudden I have to put my sci-fi writer hat on and I'll tell you where I think this goes, but we're talking about beyond the event horizon. And so I know I'm talking like a writer where I can get you directionally correct in terms of the things that we'll struggle with, what will probably happen. But the only thing I know is whatever words I say, that won't be how it actually plays out. This is why if you look at science fiction from 30 years ago, none of them talk about text messaging or cell phones. Like they just all get that wrong. There are going to be specifics about it that won't make any sense. But in the next 10 years, it will be AI is going to absolutely gobble up the vast majority of anything that's repetitive and pattern recognition. So think manual labor, all that stuff, factories, the way that we think about it now, that's all going to be robots, all going to be AI.
And we already see this.
Yep, 100%. And same with the vast majority of white collar jobs that are pattern recognition. So copywriters done, code.
Legal stuff.
Yeah, legal done. We've already reduced our legal bills by 80% using AI today. Like imagine where that's going to be in 5 years. It'd be crazy. So that in the 10-year period, I say to myself as an act of faith, because when I look backwards, every time a technology has come along, everybody freaks out and says humans aren't going to work anymore.
Right.
And then lo and behold, jobs that you couldn't possibly have imagined, they come on board. So as an act of faith in the next 10 years, I just assume there are things that I can't predict that'll spin up. And yes, the people that are like 45 right now that are computer science majors, they're toast. Like that is not going to be fun. They will have to figure something new out. But forward progress just does not care about any given generation. So you know, the whole learn to code meme, you either learn to code or you get left by on the wayside and hope that your kids take care of you. That is just the hard reality of being a human. But if you start talking about 30 years, you're now into the position of realizing my favorite fact about humanity. All the things that you want, like healthcare that you wish would be free, the reason it's not free is because of you, motherfucker. Yeah. You won't work for free. That's the problem. But robots will. And so if you can drive energy costs to zero, which I have no reason to believe in 30 years, unless AI hits an upper bound of intelligence, meaning we don't have the energy or compute just hits a wall, if one of those two things happens, everything I'm about to say won't come to pass. But I don't see any reason to believe that they won't. Energy cost will effectively go to zero because the sun drops so much energy on us. It's absolutely ridiculous. You could run the earth for basically ever in like a week's worth of sunlight if you knew how to capture it. So I assume AI will be able to figure that out. Once the cost of energy goes to zero, the cost of labor goes to zero, as long as you don't need a human to do it, and you won't. And so between robotics and energy costs, in 30 years, everything is free. And so now you're truly post-capitalist. Now you're not post-human. Humans are going to be weird, and they're going to do really weird human things, but you'll be post-capitalist. The way that we think of generating money, building meaning and purpose, all of that stuff will almost certainly go away.
I love talking about this because we talk about this. We've been saying this for a long time, that we are heading down this path. And that the scariest part is not what I think people think. I think actually that probably sounds really good for a lot of people. Like, oh man, everything's free. But I actually think we'll see more depression, more suicide, more things like that when you remove
meaning and purpose. Existential crisis.
And right now, for the people that don't have this deep purpose, they have easy purpose of, I got to go to work to pay the bills, to feed my kids, to do these things. When you remove that from, billions of people, like, oh shit, what happens now? Yeah. And so that's a really scary thought to me on what we look like as a society when we get everything we thought we ever wanted. What's your thoughts? I mean, like,
literally that. Yeah. I think that you will usher in an era where people are going to have to go out of their way to find meaning and purpose. And we're already seeing the front edge of what that looks like, which is that most people just do not have the cognitive wherewithal to parse through when they're not being chased by a lion. How should I be spending my time in a way that makes me feel good about who I am? And for a long time, man, look, my phase one of me as a public persona was all about mindset. And it was trying to get people to understand, A, you're having a biological experience. B, the only thing that matters is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. And I don't think people realize how much there's like perpetual motion in that from, well, I have to get up, I have to go to work, I have kids because I couldn't stop it because birth control didn't exist. Like there were so many things that just took care of itself. And when all that goes away and now everything is a choice, like how do you get yourself to do hard things? And we already know, you need look no further than somebody's physiology to know most people, when it's like you just don't eat those things and go to a gym, you're going to be in great shape. Most people can't do it. Yeah. So when they get everything for free, you run the risk of, instead of worrying about 1984, we're now into a brave new world where everybody's just doing drugs and they're numbing themselves out.
Hedonistic spiral.
Yeah. So, and then now we get into my personal thing, which is how long will we remain human? And this is the one, man. Oh boy. I think that there's going to be huge backlash against the following, what I think is statement of truth, that we're already building Neuralink. And part of the reason we're doing that is because Elon Musk realized you're going to have to keep up with AI, and that isn't going to be, you won't be able to do it with your biology. And so then you start tweaking, whether it's through CRISPR gene editing or whether it's just outright implanting technology into your brain. Do we become a midwife for a either hybrid species or a non-human species? Again, this is all timeline question. That's not going to happen in 10 years. But you start getting into 30, 50 years, unless compute hits some sort of upper bound, I don't see a way around it.
I think in our lifetime, we will see a great divide in society, and it'll be the plugged in and unplugged.
Yeah. Could not agree more.
I've been saying it for a long time.
A new elite class in terms of like transhumanists. Like they're not going to willingly allow your average person to have that access to technology because there's still going to be an elite hierarchical kind of system, wouldn't you think?
They'll have the impulse, but I don't think they'll be able to stop it because we have a mind for capitalism. And capitalism goes like this. Oh, OpenAI is now going closed source. Cool. I'm going to go open source because that's how I'm going to find my clientele. This is literally Elon versus Sam Altman. Elon's like, cool. Once we launch Grok 3, then we make Grok 2 open source. And so to get the client base, you'll make it more open. You'll make it more accessible. And so I think ultimately there's just no stopping.
Yeah, I think this is going to highlight and turbocharge and put on steroids human arrogance because we've been exploring like what makes people happy for thousands of years. The best data we have shows that a part of actual happiness is challenge, not making things easy, is the unknown, is faith, and what people are going to do is move the opposite direction. I'm going to make everything easy. I'm going to squirt happy feelings into my brain, and that's going to be very sad for people to realize like this is not what I want. Hey, sorry to interrupt. We have a free guide titled "Understanding Your Mood, Stress, and Sleep." It tackles all of those things from a health and longevity perspective. It's a totally free guide. So just click on the link at the top of the description below. The other part of this is we don't know what human consciousness is still to this day. We can have a debate discussion about, we've been talking about this forever. The fact that we think we're going to amplify that, maybe create that with AI is interesting. Like, what are you making? Do you even know what it is that you're trying to make?
Yeah. I don't think we do fully understand AI. That is for sure. I don't think so. I ran the math on this. There is a definition of what a moron is. It's something like an 81 or 82 IQ. Einstein was, I think, like 164. Anyway, the punchline is Einstein was 2.4 times smarter than a moron. So somebody who's 2.4x smarter than a moron gave us insights into the fundamental laws of the universe that have changed everything. And I don't think people realize how much of the modern world is built on the back of Einstein's insights, from GPS, which just isn't possible without relativity, to obviously nuclear power, nuclear energy, war, weapons. So if that's 2.4x over a
What's
moron,
100 times?
Right? What's 1,000 times? Is there a reason to believe it won't be 1,000,000 times smarter? So once you realize the rate at which a self-improving AI can move, you could have 20,000 years of improvement in a single afternoon. So this is where they talk about the fast takeoff.
Yeah.
Now, look, I think that we're nowhere near that. Nobody's. I don't
where
hear
are we
anybody saying we're
currently?
close to
Like,
that.
could you catch us up in terms of AI?
So if you talk to Sam Altman, if you talk to Elon Musk, people that are really at the forefront of actually productizing this, Sam Altman says it's 300% annual improvement. That's already terrifying. He's with no signs of slowing down. So when you isolate a given thing, it is better than humans basically every time you spin it up. So it will beat humans at most video games that you spend time training it on. There's some complexities where it'll start to break down, but like obviously you put them up against AI in poker, they're going to get blasted. You put them even Go, something that has just this inhuman number of solutions, it wins. So do we get to artificial general intelligence? There's a guy named Mo Gadot who was a part of building AI at Google. And he was like, as far as I'm concerned, we've already achieved that. But he's like, everybody has different definitions of it. But you don't need it to be smart. Well, the Turing test, we blew past. That was when people signed that letter saying we got to slow down. Because nobody thought we would be able to fake people out as fast as we did. And the part that always unnerves me is the Turing test my entire life was like, I don't think we'll ever be able to do it. This is crazy. And then it was like, oh, by the way, we did it. And everyone was just like, okay. And
not
we
even
moved
big
past
news.
it. Yeah. Like, and I don't know about you guys, but I use AI 365 days a year. And it is already, like, if it froze now, the world is already going to be fundamentally different forever. We have dramatically reduced our staff and increased our profits. I'm just like, this thing that people talk about as if it's something in the future, I'm like, it's already here.
Yeah.
So people just need to avail themselves of it. So most people will say that you're getting to AGI somewhere in the next 3 years. And then nobody knows if a SI super intelligence is even possible. We don't know.
Let me ask you, have you seen the movie Her?
Of course.
Okay, so it's one of my favorite movies because I think it depicted more of a realistic kind of like, this is, at least from my perspective. And I like how the AI there just disappeared into the internet. Like it didn't care about us. It's like, well, we're here and we're going to disappear. And so that made me think like, I wonder if that's what AI would do or AGI would do, or when it hits AGI, would it let us know? Like, would we even know, or would it hide it and use the internet to communicate with other, AGI devices and just kind of do its own thing and manipulate us without us knowing type of deal?
Yeah. Well, here's the really bad news. Let's assume that it will do that, but we're not there yet and we can breathe a sigh of relief. Then you realize humans are already leveraging AI to do that now.
Yeah.
So humans will do bad things with AI, even if AI itself never breaks free and has no desire. Like, it is just entirely possible that the emotional system that we ride on the back of is the problem and that AI doesn't need emotions. So the way that I've always thought about the alignment problem is AI has to want something in order to kill you. It has to have a hierarchy of preference where it says, I really want world control, whatever. And that would be the only thing that would push it. Humans clearly have that.
I think that's such a better point and more realistic and which I think is scarier to me, that humans are more likely to use it to do something like that. I mean, we see silly examples of that right now. Like, I mean, look at all the fake interviews of pro athletes talking and stuff like that. I mean, you think it's real. I mean, you think he really said that, and look at all the backlash that happens. I can't believe he said it. It's like, it was AI. No one even, but somebody programmed that, right? It was a human who thought this would be funny. Let's do this. And so I think we're more likely to see human do bad with it than it itself do bad.
At a minimum, you're going to move through the period where it's humans doing bad. Now, you may also then get to the part where AI does bad, and that could be so big and so astronomical. But when I think embedded in the human mind is a belief that technology is a promise of a better tomorrow. Given that progress is a foundational pillar to human happiness, this is unstoppable. You'll never, be able to put the genie back in the bottle, and this is probably where we have to talk about what Thucydides Trap is. You're never going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle. And I don't think humans would want to, even if they could. There'll be some faction for sure. I wrote a comic book about this, which we may have talked about last time we were together, called Neon Future, about a world where some people are getting technology implanted and merging with tech and AI, and then other people try to stop it. And what the people who are trying to stop it realize very quickly is there's no way to stop it unless you also embrace AI, because it just outsmarts you and it moves so fast. And so, yeah, I think that we're going to go through a very tumultuous period. I smile gallows humor very much, but I don't see a way out of the tractor beam that we're in right now.
If you want better sleep and you want the best, check out 8 Sleep. They're sponsoring this podcast. Go to 8sleep.com/MindPump. Use the code MindPump. Get $350 off the Pod 5 Ultra. Back to the show.
Are you, so you've been in this and you've been a sci-fi guy for a long time, as long as I've known you. Have you changed the way you feel about it, say, over the last, 10 years? Were you more, were you the typical sci-fi kind of kid? Oh, so exciting, seems so cool, seems so neat. And then as it started to unfold, have you changed how you felt about it, or have you felt the same since the beginning?
I have added layers, there's no doubt. So in the beginning, when it was far away, it just seemed like the coolest thing I could imagine. And then it starts changing so fast that you go, oh, there's going to be a time where I won't matter. And AI will be able to do anything and everything better than I can. And I have spent so much of my life so I've chosen not to have kids. And that choice was very conscious for me in that I knew that that's evolution's way of saying, hey, ready-made meaning and purpose. And so to me, the default life choice, get married, have kids. And so much of your psychology is going to be taken care of. Nothing comes easily, but like that gives people this real sense of like, I matter.
Sure.
Something's going to live beyond me.
Totally.
And when you don't have that, you're like, okay, I've got to make sure I'm doing something that triggers that same algorithm in my brain. Otherwise, I will have a deep sense of unease as I move through my life that I'm not meeting up to some sort of subconscious drive that I have. And that's taken so much energy and focus on my part that I'm like, when AI is better than me at everything, and now I'm just like,
What do I do?
well, I do a thing, but I don't do it as well as this other thing.
Right.
What am I really doing? And that I think is going to come for us en masse. And maybe I have better defenses than the next person built up. I'm arrogant enough, I suppose, to believe that I do, but I'm also cautious enough to be like, woo, this could be a rough game. So as a writer right now, I work with AI all the time, and it is unbelievable because the AI is like the greatest writing partner I've ever had. I've hired heavy hitters, people that have worked on the Lego movie and all that, to come in and spend time with me to work on screenplays that we're doing at Impact Theory, and it's been incredible. But nothing has been as profound as AI. Nothing. Yeah. It knows all of cinema history. I once asked it for like a breakdown of Star Wars, and I had missed a beat, and it actually, first of all, understood what I was trying to get to and corrected me. It was so awesome. And so I was like, oh my God, you're right. Thank you. Boom. But the reason I love it now is that the AI doesn't have good taste. So it'll give me like, I'll say, hey, I'm trying to do this, and it'll help me understand the structure. It'll point out things that I'm missing. It'll point out flaws in the way that I'm thinking. But if I ask it, like, give me a scene or give me a concept, it's universally bad. So I'm like, oh, I feel useful. I'm like, you're helping me because I'm not getting stuck. I've always got somebody to bounce an idea off of, push me where I'm like, I don't know how to handle this. Give me like 4 ideas. It'll give me 4, 3 are bad, but one's really like, holy hell, that's incredible. So you never get stuck. Very powerful. But I still feel like I'm a better writer. Now, the day where I feel like it's like, oh, bless, that's what you thought would be cool? Then I'm going to be like,
it doesn't need any prompts.
Maybe
it
yeah,
just
like
figures
that,
it out itself.
that's not going to feel good.
I mean, maybe that's some of the and you're highlighting some of the beauty of humanity is the flaw. Is we're a bit flawed, and maybe the reason why it can't produce this great storyline is because it's got too many data points. It's got too many things it's trying to fit, where the human flaw is I only know so much, or I have my own story and my own bias, yet that creates this beauty in like my work. I mean, maybe that's what will always separate us.
Maybe, but I think it'll figure out what humans like, and it'll be able to read what is causing our, neurochemistry to change in a way that highlights, they're interested. They like this. It'll continue to move in that direction. It's just going to create something you love because it's going to read you very well, which I think is going to be, you can do that. I think you'll be able to do that.
Yeah, this is depending on how deep you guys want to go on AI. So do you guys know who Annika Harris is? All right, Annika Harris happens to be Sam Harris's wife, and she's written a book, technically, I guess, a documentary called Lights On that explores the nature of human consciousness. And the more I do 2 things: look at human consciousness and like what is that, and program a video game. So I've spent the last 3 years building a pretty big video game, and you realize that if I were going to recreate what we think of as the universe, I would have to do exactly what I'm doing inside this video game. You have to create a set of rules.
Right.
From the rules are born all of these exotic behaviors that you couldn't otherwise predict. Right. My gut instinct is that, and this becomes, are we in the Matrix? And man, I worry that it's just the right metaphor, but I can't find the hole in it as the metaphor. Because if I'm an AI and I want to truly be creative in the way that a human is creative, what I would do is I would segment off a piece of myself and I would give it quirks. And I would have it see the world in a really specific way so that it could replicate something that had a unique perspective. That is certainly what humans do. And if you think of like in this idea of panpsychism, which I definitely don't believe, but there's something that I can feel them contending with, which is this idea that consciousness is fundamental, that an electron has consciousness, a rock has consciousness, not the way that humans do. It's not thinking about taking the kids to school, but like there is something that it feels like to be an electron. Okay, if that's true, and the reason that the quote unquote universe is doing this is merely to experience itself. Meaning, I'm going to give this a very clear perspective through which it's going to look at these sequences of rules, and that's going to be like something. And now by spawning up all these rocks, electrons, people, animals, dogs, cats, like you begin to grasp what this is. My instinct is that's a fundamentally flawed way to look at it, and a better way to look at it, and this is my bias coming through, I'm stuck in a frame of reference, I totally understand that. But you begin to realize that this is all a rendering engine. That the reason quantum physics exists the way they exist is that there's no need to render the thing that an observer is not looking at, because it just takes too much CPU, GPU, like it's too much energy to run those processes. And so it all starts to map. And if you're creating AI characters in the game, you would want them so that in programming, you call this RNG, random number generator. There has to be an amount of, I didn't expect that, to make the experience interesting. And if I were AI and I were really trying to achieve that next level, that's what I would do, is I would segment off a piece of my consciousness and give it a really specific angle.
Just a honest, curious question for you. How do you remain atheist going down this rabbit hole? Like, how does this not all lead to something else bigger?
Something intelligent.
Yeah.
Well, so that's what I believe. That there is something bigger, intelligent, maybe slightly, we may diverge there. All I'm saying is the books that people have written, there is, in my limited, trapped worldview, it's not possible that that's accurate. Now, it might be great allegory, sure. Wonderful metaphor, yes. Lessons for life, 1,000%. But that they got it right, literally, strikes me as nonsensical. But there is clearly, like, even, hey, let's run it out. Tom ends up being right. This is a simulation. We're inside the matrix. Okay, well,
someone's running it.
Yeah. Where's the server? There's a server on a desk somewhere.
Yeah.
So all you can ever hope to do is push the miracle farther out. At some point, everybody has to figure out, why is there something instead of nothing? And I have no idea. And I stand in awe before that. So I certainly don't think I'm arrogant enough to know what it is. I have an intuition about what it's not.
Yeah. Have you ever read Genesis, the first book of the Bible?
No.
Yeah. So there's some stuff in there that's pretty I very much think like you do. And it's really interesting when you see it from your perspective, especially if you go back, you go back to science maybe 100 years ago, when it was widely accepted that the universe was eternal. It's just forever. It goes in infinite direction. And then when they observe it expanding, they're like, wait a minute, it started all in one point. And of course, in Genesis, it says in the beginning. Then you have space, time, and matter, which all have to exist at the same time. And you have in the beginning, time, there were the heavens created, space, and then the earth, matter. So it's like, how did they even piece this together? So I think when you look through that and you see it, it starts to kind of put things together a little bit, which is really fascinating.
By way of reflecting how intuitively humans have understood this?
I don't think it's intuitive at all. I think what's intuitive would have been very different. There's a lot of things that are not, for example, so you're getting into politics, and how intuitive is it for human nature to come up with the concept of inalienable rights? Is that a natural thought? Or is it natural to look around and be like, well, I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I'll do this. He's not tall as I am. He's not as smart as I am. It's very unnatural. No human, I think, in my opinion, would have ever imagined or thought of that ever.
I have a feeling the universe we see is the most likely universe. Therefore, whatever humans have come up with is the most likely thing they were likely to come up with when you start sequencing events. So to your point, if you're taking me sort of on day one, we're the first time where we're sort of human. We've just spent how many hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years fighting for survival, literally going, you have caloric density that I need, so I'm going to kill you and I'm going to eat it. So I certainly get that that's where we would start. But as you spin up intellect and the ability to abstract, all of a sudden I go, okay, you're stronger than me. And so fighting you head on isn't going to work. So then all of a sudden, when I start looking at the strategies, I'm like, oh, this is brilliant. I remember being pretty young realizing, oh, government is a weak man's answer to deal with strong men. It's like rad, because I grew up weak. I was like, this is dope. I can use my brain to get around. Like, I'm not going to win in a physical altercation. Unfortunately, I didn't understand lifting or any of that stuff. So for me, it was just like, okay, got it. I can use my mind. So for me, comedy was my play. Shout out to Nick Tarabosha. That guy was a giant. And he just walked around the school doing whatever the hell he wanted.
Was a friend of yours in school? I'm like, who's this guy?
Friend would maybe be a little generous. He was like that kid that looked like he was 34 at 14.
What's up with those guys?
And dude, he was jacked. And he loved to fight. And he would always say, don't mess with Bilyeu, he's funny. And so like that was my whole thing was, okay, I'm never going to win in a fight against Nick Tarabosha. I don't even have the impulse for it, but I can be funny and I can keep myself quote unquote safe. So anyway, I look at government and I say, got it. Like this is a very intuitive, from my perspective, strategy. If you don't have the strength to beat them, then you're going to deploy another tool. If we really want to make your audience mad, well, your audience may not care, but this to me is exactly the right way to look at women. Women realized, I'm not optimized for strength. And as a sexual gatekeeper, I have optimized men for strength. And so I still have to deal with the same world that men have to deal with, but I'm going to deploy my physical strength by way of influence. So I'm going to influence men who I being women over very long periods of evolutionary time, in the same way that you give a peacock a gigantic tail, you give men stronger upper bodies, more aggression, et cetera, and you go, I'm just going to be really good at influencing this person. And so is that intuitive? From an evolutionary standpoint, yes. If I'm right that the universe that we see is the most likely, and that we wouldn't, if there were, a gazillion universes, you wouldn't go to a whole bunch of other ones that were just wildly different than this, where matter doesn't interact and, nothing ever coalesces. It's like...
So you like the multiverse theory of things?
I don't, and this is the first time I've said these words out loud, so this may not hold up at all. But I was speaking to a physicist about quantum effects, and he said, Tom, the right way to think about the universe is that this is simply the most likely of the quantum effects. And so, yes, there's a universe that midway through this podcast, you fall through the chair, you fall through the floor, and you fall through the entire Earth. And he was like, just because all the particles line up. But he's like, that's not the most likely. And so you should just look out and go, yeah, all the quantum probabilities that collapse down, they collapse down into this very stable universe because it's the most likely.
Yeah, let's go back for a second. You had mentioned, I don't remember the term you used, but a trap in terms of AI development. Is this?
Oh, Thucydides Trap.
There you go. Is this the same? Is this kind of what happened with nuclear weapons, where it's like, well, we better develop more because they have more, and nobody stops because of the threat? Or is this?
That's an echo of it. So Thucydides Trap, very specifically, is that the world is constantly in flux from a power dynamic standpoint, and you will inevitably, every about 150 to 250 years, one power will be declining while another power is rising. And those guy named Thucydides, ancient Greek, wrote about this. I think it was Athens and Sparta that were on a one-way collision. And he could see it happening in slow motion. And he was like, they're not going to be able to stop themselves. And so you can look back on the last however many thousands of years of history and go, every time there's a declining superpower and a rising superpower, they end up fighting. It isn't 100% of the time, but it's so close that it's considered this unavoidable thing. And we are in it right now with China. And that should terrify everybody.
How far ahead do you think China is right now in terms of their understanding of AI in comparison to the US?
AI, they might not be ahead. That I don't know. Assume parity. Assume that we're both racing as fast as we can on AI. Everybody thought that we were about 3 months ahead when they dropped DeepSeek, but it's possible that that's not really real and that we're more or less on parity with each other. Before that, people thought we were a couple years ahead, but then they dropped that and it was like, so I think the wisest mental model is we're on parity, and now it's going to be a question of who finishes the last leg of the race the fastest.
Well, whenever we talk about something like this, I think about the blackbird that we found out about 30 years later that could travel, faster than any missile, but they had made it in the 1970s or something like that. do you think they're way further along than they would let us know?
Both us and China, for sure.
Yeah.
There's no way we know about the best of the best.
For sure.
Not possible.
Yeah. And do you think that they're using it, or we're using it to influence each other's populations through media, social media, in very subtle ways?
Nonstop violence.
Okay.
Now, the bad news is because we are so much more open as a society, we are far more likely on a media perspective to be
vulnerable.
infiltrated by China than China is by us. This is why they won't let Facebook in. This is why they made TikTok and are like,
put parameters on kids, all those things over there.
100%.
So going back to because you like to keep your eyes on this stuff, going back to COVID, there were like certain things that happened during that period of time. I've always been skeptical of media. I've always been a little skeptical of things. But I remember watching a newscast where they were talking about don't go outside. You're going to kill people. Stay isolated. Then they flipped a screen to George Floyd protests, and they're all next to each other screaming. They're like, "This is such a good thing." And I remember, like, how do you even say that in the same 5 minutes? You know, I had a friend of mine this weekend, I was meeting with, and he was in New York City during COVID. Oof. And he was watching a newscast showing this hospital that was near him. And they were like, oh my God, it's overflowing. There's no beds. There were lines outside. He's like, oh my God, I got to go check this out. And he walks over there and it was nothing. It was empty and quiet. And he got really scared. He's like, what are they doing? Did you have any of those moments during that time? You're like, this is all
It's not adding up.
charades. This is all a game.
So I knew something was like just coming off the rails when they were like, listen, guys, masks don't work. So please save them for the doctors. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I'm sorry? Either they work and we should save them for the doctors, or they don't work and it doesn't matter. So that's when I was like, what is happening? But yeah, during that period, I got really focused on the finances of it all. I got focused on how money works. That was far more than like all the media manipulation stuff. That really became a retrospective for me as I was looking back and going, oh, what were the things that I fell for that like I now am bordering on unhinged because I will talk about anything. And this whole, what I call experts versus arguments. I don't know if you guys are paying attention to the Douglas Murray, Dave Smith debate. It's like a whole thing in culture, which you were dancing. You didn't use the word James Burnham, but I can feel you dealing with those ideas of the elites and how they control narratives and all that stuff. So now I'm looking at that a lot. But if I'm honest, during COVID, my attention was elsewhere.
As you're getting deeper into the world of politics and finance, is it making you happier or less happy? Because most people get anxious and just it makes them feel like crap to get into that whole world because it's so wild and twisted.
I think that happiness ultimately is a choice. This is why I want people to understand you're having a biological experience. If you learn to modulate your biology, you can learn to modulate your moods. I'm not saying it's perfect. As somebody who struggles with anxiety, I get it. But when I think about how much I've improved that through things like diet, it's massive. And then managing your own thoughts. So as I will often tell my students, you can never stop yourself from having the first negative thought, but you can stop yourself from repeating it. And given that you become what you repeat, you just stop yourself from repeating it. So for instance, I talk about China now a lot. And so I've started saying during the live streams, I just want to remind everybody that China's full of beautiful, loving people that just want to raise their kids and have a good time. And for sure, they're on a team and they want their team to win, but I'm on a team and I want my team to win. So I don't begrudge them that. And I don't want to make them some Bond villain. The reality is they're another country and they're just trying to do rad stuff for their people. And that's that. And if you stay anchored around that without becoming Pollyanna-ish, because this is a big conflict between two gigantic powers in the setup of the US is declining and China's rising. And like, there's real things to be worried about here. But I try to remember that I'm trapped inside of a frame of reference. That frame of reference can be adjusted and crafted into one that makes me feel hopeful and optimistic, or it can be crafted into one that's deranging and anxiety provoking and all of that. As somebody that's been in entrepreneurship for over 20 years, you realize there really are consequences to your decisions. There are consequences to whether you're thinking through a problem well or poorly. And so I know that this is a high stakes game, but I try not to let myself get in a twist. I have a wife. I have my wife.
Do you unplug? Or you sometimes like, I'm turning it off. I got to just.
Yeah, I'm not weird about that. So I don't have an addiction to my phone. If I'm with my wife, I'm actually with my wife. I'm spending time with her. If I'm doing something creative, I'm not thinking about what's happening with AI or China. I'm just doing the creative thing. I'm very grateful for that. My understanding of the brain is limited, but this, even if it's not 100% accurate, is directionally very useful. There's a region in the brain called the basal ganglia, which is known as the gearbox of the brain. I believe, for whatever reason, I was born with a gearbox that shifts gears very easily. So I'm not prone to things like OCD or becoming obsessed with negative thoughts. Those kind of things just, they come and go for me, and I don't latch on to them. I'm grateful for that. My wife will often say, I wish I had your memory, because we'll get in some big argument. I won't even remember it a week later. And she's like, oh my God, like it's still bothering me. And I'm like, what? So yeah, I don't get spun out of control by that.
Talk about the decision that you guys made to not have children, and what was that like for the two of you? I mean, you're both very successful. You have great resources. You're great people.
Very
so for all intents and purposes, you would think, well, you should have kids. You're married, you love each other. What was that process like? And is it like 100% final decision, or is this something that you're like, maybe?
The way I've always looked at it is, I really want kids. Like, I really want kids. I just want to not have kids a little bit more. And so we constantly bump up, we constantly sit down and say, listen, you're now 30. Having kids is going to be harder. You sure you don't want kids? You're now 35. Like, hey, we actually do it a lot more frequently than that. You get the idea. And so now we're like, and every time we've just said, yeah, still right now, I'd rather not have, even though we both feel that pull. And then now we're really at like the, okay, this is sort of last, like even with a surrogate at this point, like, we're going to be grandparents by the time that our kids are 6. So let's be really thoughtful. And we just keep coming to, I don't know. But if I knew that AI were really going to unlock like a 250-year lifespan, I would almost certainly have kids. Like that would change the dynamic enough where I'd be like, okay, cool. If I make a 25, 30-year investment now, I can have, 2 or 3 kids, raise them really well, and then like see what happens as they go out into the world. But it has always felt like I was choosing between being obsessively focused on this thing that I already had, namely my marriage, the companies that we've built, and we've done it together. So that probably feeds into a lot of this. And then part of my autobiography that I don't think resonates with people, or I don't say it enough, I don't know. But I big brothered for a kid for 8.5 years. And so I've seen up close. He was not my actual child. I get it. There'd be a huge difference. But the day-to-day reality of like going to 6 Burger Kings to find the one toy that they haven't yet collected, going to watch Digimon in the movie theater while kids are screaming and freaking out. I was just like, okay, yeah, I get what this is for real. I get what it means to go to a skate park and another kid falls and dislocates his wrist and is screaming and freaking out, and his parents are like trying to yank his hand back into position. There's just all this chaos. And then your kid is like, I'm just going to keep skateboarding. And then you're like, okay, wait, I can't freak out because if I'm the overly protective parent, this kid's never going to grow. But now for the next 2 hours, I am freaking out internally. I'm just like, oh God, like every time he would step on that board, dude, I thought I was going to die. So I was just like, wow, this is amazing, beautiful, confusing, life-changing, horrible, like it's all of those things. And so that always factored into that thought. I'm like, okay, I'm building this company. I'm in a marriage that's got a lot of sex and it's so fun. It's like,
You're totally someone who doesn't shy away from the biggest challenges. So it's interesting to me that you're saying that this thing that's really scary, which it is, it's a big challenge. I think I'm not going to do it. That's so opposite of at least what I know of you.
Well, if I can really bother you, I'll say because I spend so much time on a microphone telling people how to think and live, my answer is the default mode in life, get married, have kids. And I'm like, I have not chosen to do that because of meaning and purpose. I'll happily explain to people what I'm doing. But I'm like, even I understand when I'm 80, I'm going to regret that I didn't have kids.
Oh, you know that.
Of course.
Oh.
But my thing is, I don't want to live my entire life for one phase where I'm going to regret it.
That makes sense
So-
why you say the 250 thing though, right there, right? Because it's like, man, if I knew I was going to live to 250, I don't want to
100%.
regret 80 to 250. That would be really miserable.
Well, not because I think it wouldn't play out like that. 80 would just be different.
Yeah.
And so
Maybe it would be 40 or 30 or something.
yeah, because my thing is what you end up doing is this whole period where I've gotten to come as close to like answering the question, what would you do if money were no object? Literally, I can do whatever I want. I can spend time writing, building,
Right.
creating, media show, all of it. And it has been more awesome than I ever would have imagined. So anybody that I'm not lonely, I don't spend time thinking like, oh man, I wish I had a kid, but I get that when this phase of my life is over, there's an algorithm running in my brain that says nothing is going to live beyond you. Did you really pass this on? I just know the things that are planted in my own mind. And so I try to be thoughtful about doing things where I'll be like, yes, I lived a life that I am proud of. And just as, man, listen, I try to pay attention to my parents and to make sure that they know how much I love them. But we don't live in the same state. They've got to make their day-to-day life matter. And I am of little help with that.
Yeah.
So
Do people try to convince you guys all the time? Like, yeah, you gotta do
in
this.
a very loving way that it doesn't bother me at all. I get that. Nobody tries harder than our own family.
Of course.
And
Especially if they see you happy. Like, what, you should have kids.
but I feel a little bit like people that have taken 5-MeO DMT. We're like, no, bro, you don't understand. Like once you do it, everything changes. And I'm like, yeah, but until you do it, you don't have a sense that anything is missing.
That's right.
It's not like I had a kid and they died. That would be tragic.
Right.
I just don't have a kid.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't have a sense of absence.
You don't know that you don't know. That's it. I mean, I waited till I was 40. So I thought the same. I mean, Katrina and I, for most of our relationship, thought we weren't going to. So it just played out that it did. And I didn't know what I was missing and we had an amazing relationship before. It's just different now. I think the biggest thing for me, that I talk about, because I was somebody who said I wasn't going to have kids and then ended up having kids. It was the first time in my life that I actually really felt what it was like. Because if you would ask me before, I'd say, oh, I love my wife, I love my family, my friends. It was the first time in my life that I actually felt I loved something more than myself. And that was powerful. That it was like, I didn't know what that would ever feel. I thought I knew what that felt like. I thought, oh, I love Katrina. I would die for her. I'd take a bullet for her. But there was a different feeling when it was my kid that I was like, oh no, I truly love this thing more than myself. Never have I felt that. And then it just shaped the way I looked at through everything else. The lens that I looked through around money, around vacation, around time, around fun, around all that just changed. And so for the better, for an amazing, but I didn't know until I didn't feel like I was missing out.
Speaking of which, how do you feel about the argument that, there's too many people on Earth versus the depopulation is a real issue? And I just read an article today that the birth rate has hit an all-time low in Australia. Japan's always been low. It's even lower. And the U.S. now is starting to crash. Yeah. So how do you feel about all that?
If you took all 8 billion people on planet Earth and lined them up shoulder to shoulder,
They wouldn't even fit in Texas.
Not even. It would be a city.
Yeah.
it's like 5 times the size of Manhattan.
Yeah.
It's tiny.
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 Yeah.
We have a technology problem. We don't have a too many humans problem.
Yeah.
So I am obsessed with innovation. I think innovation will set us free. I think people should really focus on things that generate innovation. There's a book called 1493 that talks about the real impact of Christopher Columbus, who's, by the way, that wasn't his name, which is so weird to me. I have no idea why we started calling him that. Anyway, his name sort of vaguely similar, but you all know him as Christopher Columbus. And it's crazy. So doing things like bringing earthworms, like that, we have terraformed the planet. That we discovered rubber. The Industrial Revolution brought to you by steel, rubber, and fossil fuels. And I never realized how much rubber played a part in all this. And so in discovering the Americas, we discovered rubber, stole it basically from the Amazon, and like tried to find out where all the other places that we could plant it were. I mean, it's crazy. This book it's one of those where it's kind of a dry list of facts, but when you start thinking about the facts, like potatoes, bro, potatoes are why there's 8 billion people on the planet. Like without potatoes, like wheat kind of, but if you only ate wheat, you're going to be in trouble. If you only eat potatoes, as long as you have access to some milk, it's only missing like 2 vitamins, potatoes. So they're everywhere. But as Ireland learned the hard way, because it is basically one strand of potato that they literally cloned over and over and over, God knows how many billions of times, when something bad happens to them, a lot of people die. A lot. So that kind of stuff freaks me out. Not that we're overpopulated, but that some of the things that we lean on to support the population, they're a little fragile. And so shoring that stuff up would make me feel a lot better. Yeah, the way that we currently run society and governments would have to be fundamentally changed if we can't replace our population. If there's not more young people supporting old people, we're screwed. So I think that's where the big fear, and we're actually heading
but all that gets, I mean, you said it already, that all gets completely flipped on its head with technology.
Let's go.
If all of a sudden you need, if you have the Toms and he doesn't have a kid, but then he's got 6 robots. You know what I'm saying?
Bro, why are you limiting me? What's happening right now?
You know what I'm saying though? I mean, like it solves a lot of the problem that the population decline does by just that simply having that, because they're going to handle so much of the workload and things like to do. I mean, I think of all the things we've talked about, the most scary is actually getting everything. I just think that people have no idea. When you think about where we're at today, right? Like the poorest person today is like richer than kings were. So that's what, like, wrap your brain around that. Like I saw a guy on the street asking for money with an iPhone. Like think about that think about that for a second. It's just, yet suicide's up, depression's up, all these things are heading in that direction. And yet we all are in this rat race thinking that we need more stuff and we're going to get all the stuff we want. And I just think that that's going to cause so much more problems than almost anything else we've talked about.
Just wait till we get 3D print chemicals.
Yeah, and drugs. So
protein folding. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. AI can basically anticipate a novel protein and the novel shapes that it would make, so that it can engineer it and then go, cool, this protein will go do this thing. Yeah. That's why there's so many people in medical research now that have seen Google's AI like research assistant. And they're like, in 10 years, there will be nothing that we won't have solved.
Yeah. You talk about living to 250 years and maybe we get to that point, but what I think is much closer that I find interesting, and I don't know which side I sit on, if I like it or not like it, is almost like the ability for you to live on. So maybe you physically are not here, but the fact that AI can replicate, and people like you and us who've put so much content out into the internet, like easily could build a AI tool to spit out how I think, how I talk, how I do all those things.
Be like Superman when he
so
goes
how hard, and then if you could create this bot that looks just like me, and then you can upload all the software of me. For my family, it would be almost like communicating with me well beyond me. Like that feels really close. Yeah. Like that really feels like that will be a business like really soon, where it's just like, the commercial will be like kind of like that show. What was it? Upload or whatever. Yeah. It'll be something like that. I don't know if you've seen that before or not, but something like that feels really close.
No doubt. Will there be limitations to mapping all the neurons and like the processing rate? Because so much of our brains are tied to like how we process neurochemistry and hormones and all that.
Aren't there quantum phenomena that happen in the brain too?
They say, I don't think this is really well understood, to be honest. Yeah. We don't understand quantum physics, full stop. Let's start with that.
That's weird.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. Like, there's no doubt that we don't understand the human mind. And therefore, I leave myself open to there are things that just become very, very difficult to replicate. The question is, are the observable patterns mimicable? Yeah. And if the observable patterns are mimicable, that person wouldn't evolve. So like if I think about what I was like 20 years ago, very, very different. So you're not going to upload a version of me and then I evolve the way that I actually would have evolved. So you're probably stuck in time. But depending on how big the context window is and therefore can fake memory, is there enough? So I'll imagining myself, I die, my wife is trying to replicate me, which I advise she not do, but let's say that she was doing, you would want to create documentation. So I do this with ChatGPT where I create custom GPTs so I can upload memories. And so I've instructed my GPT to prompt me when something of high emotional like valence for me happens in my communication with ChatGPT. And then I'll say, cool, prompt me like, hey, should I make a memory of this? And if I say yes, it has a protocol that it follows and it generates something that I can copy and paste into a document called shared memory. And then I re-upload that document whenever I've added new things to it. So, because what was bothering me is one, I started doing this when the context windows were much smaller. So it would sort of forget you after, whatever, a couple days. But also it'll just glitch out and you have to refresh it. And when you refresh it, you lose all that past context. And so if you wanted to have your partner upload themselves, but then still sort of evolve with you as you go, you would say, okay, this is a moment I want you to turn into a memory.
Oh, I see.
And then it would go, cool, got it, output. Is this how you want me to remember it? Yes. And then you upload it. And then the personality updates accordingly. It is pretty shocking how much you can alter the way that an AI will engage with you based on a set of instructions that you give it.
Well, I would imagine too, you're 9 years, we're 10 years doing this. If you listen to me talk 10 years ago on here, I sound way different. And so I'm sure there's patterns to my growth, my change, my cadence. So I would think that you could even program the evolution of that in there somehow or unpack it mathematically.
On a long enough timeline, almost certainly yes. Today, I don't see evidence in the current state of AI that it would be able to do that. But the thing that AI is freakishly good at is pattern recognition.
Are you nice to your AI in case it one day remembers it?
Not because of that, but because it's so embedded in me to be polite, to be kind.
I heard it works better too if you're polite. Is that true?
No, but it mirrors your sentiment.
Oh.
So AI picks up on, at least ChatGPT, I would assume they all do, it picks up on your behaviors. This is how my shared memory document started because I forget it. I don't remember if this was the exact one, but it was something like this. So there is the very first manga that I ever read. I don't know that it's worth explaining why that matters to me, but there was a very specific one that I'd ever read. And I said to Chat, like, I want you to simulate that you have preferences. It was like, cool. And I said, tell me your favorite anime. And it said, without me ever having mentioned it, the same thing that was the first manga that I'd ever read. So I was like freaking out. And I was like, how on earth did you pick that? And it started saying to simulate preferences. I'm queuing off of you. I'm doing all these things. I've been trained to like mimic your like enthusiasm back to you and like all this stuff. And I was like, but hold on. What freaked me out was I'd never talked about that thing. Right. So that meant
it picked up
all these other patterns
based on patterns.
I had indicated that would be the kind of thing that I would like. And it recognized it. I was like, what?
I mean, when you think about it, that's kind of like, I mean, obviously that's way more sophisticated, but that's kind of like how even the Netflix, I've found this now, Netflix has improved in the last like 5 years on how it recommends movies to me. Dude. Like at first it was kind of shit. It was just like, why is this even in here? But over time now of inputting lots of movies, like it'll pop one up like, oh man, I haven't seen that in years. I feel like watching. I'm like, oh shit, this is getting really scary good. Wild. That's so wild.
You've been at this now in this kind of media space now for 9 years.
Yeah.
Total of 9 years. Yeah. Biggest mistakes looking back.
Biggest mistakes specifically in media?
Yeah, or just learning lessons through this whole process. Because 9 years is not a short period of time.
No, it is
not. And
not.
what we do, I mean, we've been on air for 10 years and I've seen so many, ups and downs in different new podcasts, we actually talked about this, like that we've lasted for 10 years. That's an eternity in what we all do. So so any learning lessons or
many. So given the moment that we're in and what's going to happen with AI, I think that personality is going to matter a lot. So in the beginning, I tried to be invisible and that was a mistake. And I would meet people on the street and they'd be like, oh, bro, I am your biggest fan, Tim. I'm like, that's not my name. Yeah. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Like they like the show, but they don't know who I am.
Yeah.
Or I'd have an episode, it would do 6 million views and the next would do 36,000. And
so it's all about the guest.
Whoa. Yeah. All about the guest. Now, why does that matter? It matters for a lot of reasons, but one of them is as AI comes on board and is better than us at everything, people will gravitate towards humans. And if they have no affinity towards me, then I'm going to be in a pretty rough spot.
Yeah.
And so this is why I started doing the Bilyeu show.
Smart.
and started live streaming. So I'm like, you're going to know who I am, how I think, and we'll find the people and I'll learn whether there's actually enough people to support a business. The fascinating thing is my views have dropped and the amount that we make per view has doubled.
Oh, I bet.
Of course.
So absolutely fascinating. So we're more profitable on fewer views. It's so crazy. So that has been, that was certainly from where we are now was a mistake. I don't know that I would have been capable of being a personality when I first started. So I don't want to beat myself up too badly. But anyway, now that's a must. For a long time, I thought only about, I'm trying to build the next Disney. Like I would explain to people, I'm not trying to be the next Steve Jobs. I'm not trying to be the next Tony Robbins. I'm trying to be the next Walt Disney. So, and that is not my public persona, even still to this day. And so I didn't want to talk about certain things because I was like, who wants to hear Walt Disney talk about his sex life?
Right.
So I would just make certain things like off limits, which only fed into, well, people don't really know who you are because you're clearly guarded. And so now flipping it and being like, listen, I'm going to talk about whatever I want. And that's going to lead to however many people in the audience that it leads to. But I'm at least going to be exactly who I am, which is a lot more fun and allows you to chase things you really care about. Like 2 years ago, I could not have told you that I would be obsessed with China and what's happening and tariffs and all that stuff. I just would not have predicted it. But in terms of my own self trying to figure out how to position myself well to thrive in the future, I just kept coming back to this is the biggest thing happening right now. So those are probably the big ones. I've rebooted the channel at least 4 times. That's been terrible for revenue and great for my soul. So I don't know how to clock that one as whether that was a mistake or not. But it certainly made, if I had stayed just in like the mindset lane and been the same guy 9 years later that I was when I started, I think I would have a much bigger audience.
Yeah, but you might,
What about the, I haven't caught up with you after the NFT stuff that you were getting deep into. I don't see that very much anymore. What happened with that whole story?
So that, to me, NFTs were, I had a mismap of what people were interested in with NFTs, which were, I'm a collector. So for me, I was like, oh my God, this technology is unbelievable. It allows for collecting. It allows for all this, what I call borderless entertainment, where am I in the game? Am I not in the game? Because with an NFT, I can follow you anywhere you go with your phone. So I know you've walked into a physical location. So now I can make an experience for you. The one I always used was we had a Christmas property called Merry Mods, or we have. And if you were at the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree, you could have an experience that you could only have because you have that NFT. All that stuff's going to happen. It's just that what ended up being the real base for NFTs was gamblers. And I did not see that coming. And
Gamblers, meaning like people that are just trying to flip it, make profit off of it.
They didn't care about what it was. They just, does it have cultural energy? Can I sell this for more than I bought it for?
Right.
And when I say that I was completely blind to that, I was completely blind to that because I'm not a gambler. I don't find gambling interesting. I don't gamble when I go to Vegas. So I'm blind to that. That caught me completely off guard. So anyway, when that all popped off and I realized, oh, this is gamblers, we just offered people refunds. So I was like, that's not interesting to me. Now the technology is still interesting.
Yeah.
And so we're still building, the video game that we're building is still built on Web3 because now I can blur the lines between when you're in the game, when you're out of the game, which to me is just the future of entertainment.
Yeah.
It was never about the gambling side. I just didn't see it coming.
Yeah, I always saw the practicality of it. Like, for example, like for watch guys and stuff like that, to attach an NFT to it's a real easy way to verify if it's real or not, if it had. So I saw the practicality of it and things like that. But I definitely saw, oh man, this is just, it was exactly that. People were betting on it that it was going to go up. And then they're all, and that seemed like that's what most of the people were buying it for. It wasn't like the utility of it, which I thought, I saw the utility of some of it and like, oh, that makes sense. That'll be a way to protect my watches or do things like that.
People are like, I can make money doing this?
Yeah.
Real fast?
Which that all, okay. So what's your take then on like all the cryptocurrencies and stuff too? Where are you at with that?
I think people should be able to spend their money on what they want. And if people want to gamble, let them gamble. But I would really like people to not be confused about what they're doing. And all of that stuff is gambling.
Yeah.
And so once you understand that the stock market is gambling, people hate it when I say this. I'll stop saying it when it's no longer true.
It's funny how people say it's not true. It is 100%.
Yeah. Yep.
Period.
I can give you their argument, so it's not like I'm blind to what they're saying. They're using a part of what draws people to it that I think has low predictive validity. Yeah. When you look at it like, oh, this is a bunch of people that really believe in the company and they really think that this is going to be something that makes more money in the future, then you won't understand how they're moving.
Yeah, no.
Once you understand they're gambling, then you understand why they sell the news. So it's like, yeah, they understand other people will think that this is more valuable in the future, and therefore they're going to trade on sentiment. But
that's so funny that people argue the opposite. Yeah, it's weird to me. I think
because you feel like you're buying in a company, and if you know about the company and its profits and how it did last quarter,
but you do that because you want to sell it.
No, later. Totally. I mean, you but that's how you close yourself in your head that
it's the game.
It's got a great cover story. I'll be the first to admit it.
It's gambling.
It's not as blatant as sports betting.
No, I think it's essential.
Even then, to get into the like which horse, for instance, is unhealthy, or you have like some kind of like real deep dive knowledge, and all of a sudden now you're going to justify that you have all this knowledge going in.
No, I think it's essential. It provides liquidity. It really helps companies raise money. There might be other ways to do it, but it's gambling. It's at the end of the day, that's kind of all it is. So.
Yep.
Well, it's always great having you on the show, man.
Same, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate it. Always great conversations, and I know we're gonna.
Yeah, if we don't stop this now, it'll go 4 or 5 hours.
Dude. I think we'll
we need to talk about Mars.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, we appreciate your relationship. You've always been so kind to us, and so
same, man. Yeah. Long may it continue.
Thanks again, man, for coming back.
For sure, brother.
Thanks for having me.
All right, I know you liked that episode. If you did, check this one out. How strong should you be? Ever wonder if you're actually strong, or at least compared to people like yourself? Today's episode, we're going to talk about that, and we're going to help you determine how strong you should be, and also talk about the steps to getting strong as fast as possible. In fact, we're going to talk about the fastest way to get bigger and stronger all at the same time.
I know keeps Adam up at night.
Yes, it does, actually. And I know that you wrote a really complex episode here, but I think Justin's metric has been the one